So welcome to all of our participants. As you come in, we'll just be having a couple of minutes while everyone filters in from the waiting room. Good morning, all of you who are coming from within the MENA region, and I think a very late good evening to those of you who are joining from North America, like our speaker is. You will notice that your videos are off and your microphones are muted. For those of you who haven't joined us for events before, don't worry, you will still have a chance to engage with our speaker and ask questions at the end. It's purely to make sure that nothing interrupts the talk as we go along. For those of you who are just coming in again, thank you very much for joining us this morning / this evening, depending where you're coming from. In a few minutes, we'll start. We're just waiting for everyone to finish filtering in, and then we will get started. For those of you who haven't already heard me, once again, your video and your microphones are muted, but we will offer you the chance to engage with our speaker and ask questions towards the end of the session. We'll just give it another couple of minutes because I know some people are, it's quite early in the morning for those of you who are coming from slightly further afield. Might even be sort of 5 or 6 in the morning for some of you, so we do apologize and thank you for joining us. In the meantime, if you want to say hello and introduce yourselves in the chat, please do. We love to know where our speakers are coming from. We love to know how many countries we've got here, and it's nice for everyone to introduce themselves and have a bit of a chat. So please do use the chat function. That's the function at the bottom with the single speech bubble. Introduce yourselves, let us know where you're from, and just generally say hello to everyone, and we will get started in a few seconds because we notice a few more people are just starting to filter in. Once again, for those of you who are joining us, sorry, I sounded like a bit of a stuck record at this stage. For those of you who are just coming in now, once again, thank you for joining us, and let us know where you're from in the chat. Please say hello. And you will notice that you are muted and your videos are off. This is just to ensure that the recording itself and this talk aren't interrupted. However, you will have a chance to engage with our marvelous speaker shortly at the end during the Q&A session. Thank you for those of you who are already introducing yourselves. Everyone, please do say hello and let us know where you're from in the chat. We do like to know where everyone's dialing in from. And for those of you who are coming from the region, I hope you had a lovely Eid break and are feeling very fresh and ready to tackle this really meaty and important topic today concerning open access and how we build that infrastructure to ensure that everyone has access to everything. Okay, well, we're about 3 minutes past. I think we're ready to start. We have some housekeeping slides now anyway, so more people can come in the interim. So first of all, we always have to do this. Most of you are probably incredibly familiar with Zoom now after years of COVID and online everything. However, it always helps to have a little refresher. So just a reminder, you can move the Zoom features window if it's getting in your way. If anyone is speaking too fast or you have any concerns, do use the raise hand icon and that will just notify us to a problem and then we can try and solve it. Also, if you have a question, use the chat box if you're having problems with your audio or your visual, or you have any questions for us as the organizers of the event, please do put them in the chat. You can either address the whole group or you can address the chat in the chat function. You can just select host and send a message just to the host or just to the host and panelists, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Also, as I mentioned, feel free to use the chat throughout the talk to engage and express, hopefully, your admiration for what the speaker's saying, and you know, let us know your thoughts. If, however, you have any questions, specifically, I mean questions for the speaker, please do use the double speech bubble. So that's the Q&A box down at the bottom as well, specifically for those questions, so that we at the end can pull those questions out and ask the speaker. If you put them in the main chat, they might get missed and you might not get the chance to have your question answered by John. So we'll move on to the next slide now, please, Nahil. Just a little bit of a reminder for those of you who don't know who we are or can't remember. This event is organised by the Forum for Open Research in MENA in collaboration with the Public Knowledge Project. So the Forum for Open Research in MENA is a non-profit membership organisation which we've launched to support the advancement of open science policies and practices in higher education institutions and research communities across all 22 Arab states. Now, our goals are to support the development and growth of open science ecosystems in higher education institutions and research communities and libraries, to create accessible and localized resources to support the implementation of open science policies and practices, to encourage the growth of a collaborative regional community of partners and cooperation across all 22 Arab states, and also across the wider globe with our strategic partners such as PKP, who John is representing today. And finally, to champion the development of right-to-left functionality in key open source and open science technological solutions. And just a reminder at this point, if you do use social media in any of its many, many forms, and you want to post about today's event, please do use the hashtag #FORM4Open, if you see it down in the bottom corner on this slide, just so that then we can track and engage with it as well and make sure to repost your work. Brilliant. Go on to the next slide, please. So just a brief overview of what we do as F.O.R.M, the Forum for Open Research in MENA. We have three areas of activities. The first of all, we've already mentioned, is building those resources. So whether it's working with organizations to develop right-to-left infrastructure to support Arabic, we're also launching a journal to host research about the development and implementation of open science policies and practices in the higher education sector across the Arab world, and that journal will be launched later this year, and also developing guidance resources and evaluation frameworks for institutions in the region to track and support their open science activities. We also have the annual forum. This year's annual forum is being held in Abu Dhabi on the 23rd and 24th of October this year, in partnership with UNESCO and Khalifa, and I'll talk a bit more about it at the end of the event. But I'm really excited. The call for papers has just closed, so we're reviewing it, but I can let you know that we're going to be having 3 keynotes, 22 sessions, and 70 speakers from about 25 countries around the world. So we really are, it's going to be a great event, and we hope many of you will join us either in person or online. And finally, the third pillar of our activities are our community development activities, and this includes workshops and webinars such as today. We're also developing some working groups to work on key themes and issues facing the development of open science in the region. And we also have a discussion forum. So if you ever find that you have a really pressing question that isn't answered during one of these events, do go and log into our discussion forum and leave it, and we'll try and either answer it ourselves or put you in touch with the right expert who can help you work through the problem. Brilliant. So that's a little bit about us. Now it is my huge pleasure and honor to hand over to John Malinsky, who is the founder of the Public Knowledge Project, PKP, who are one of our strategic partners, and we're hugely thrilled that they agreed to partner with us on the F.O.R.M initiative as well. And he is going to talk to us today about open access on a global scale, extending the public right to know. So over to you, John.
Thank you, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me share my screen. Oh, yes, here we are, sorry. I trust everyone can see that sufficiently, or they would put their hand up and say something about it. I am John Malinsky, and I'm here in Vancouver, speaking to you who are scattered around the world, and particularly in the Middle East. It's 10 o'clock in the evening here. I don't think I'll get too sleepy, but if I do nod off, do send a quick reminder. But it's a delight to be here. And the fact that I can do this is one of the benefits, I think, one of the few benefits of the pandemic, that we've learned how to share on this international scale on a Zoom-like basis in multiple time zones. I'm here to talk to you about open access on a global scale, and I'll explain a little bit about that before I get into the slides. This extending the public right to know, to me, is a very fundamental human right. This right to know, it's part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's part of what we think of as the basis of education. And I should say at the beginning that I am a school teacher by trade, and was a school teacher for a decade. With young children, teaching them to read. And in all that time, I had great hopes for what they would read when they grew up. And part of the inspiration for this public knowledge project is to increase the quality of the research and scholarship that's available to everyone, so that the right to read and the right to learn in school becomes a right to know, and to the best knowledge, the most carefully vetted knowledge, to the knowledge that represents the the extent of our learning and scholarship. That's our goal. And what I want to talk about in particular is how the Public Knowledge Project, the work that we have been doing to extend open access on a global scale. I want to talk about the way in which knowledge is now circulating on a whole new basis, as a gift of the internet, as an inspiration that comes from scholars and researchers and universities around the world in a way that wasn't previously recognized. And this global knowledge exchange is at the very heart of what motivates our work at the Public Knowledge Project, and is largely what I want to describe to you, give you a sense of the scale. One of the issues is that research is often represented as the work of the global north. The major publishers that we think of in terms of Elsevier and Springer Nature are all part of that global north aspect, the dominance. And I want to convince you over the course of the next 35 or so minutes, I want to convince you that there in fact is a global scale. And it starts right here. I want to start with an example of what I mean by this global scale for learning. This is a website. We're jumping right into the open access world, and this is actually books. This is Language Science Press. And what I want to draw your attention to, and I'll be talking about the software behind Language Science Press, which is where we do our work, but I first want to start with the sense of community and the global scale of that community. And in particular, this is the homepage of the press. And Language Science Press is an organization of scholars. It's not a commercial entity at all. It is a cooperative amongst linguists. And they started this press about 10 years ago on the basis of being able to share books on a non-commercial, on an open basis, open access basis, in the study of language. The study of language is a highly specialized field, but at the same time, it's of interest to everyone. The standing of languages, the growth and development of languages, the aspects of change in language. And in particular, what the Language Science Press is doing is it's creating a community of editors. I want to draw your attention to the 400 plus editorial board members and 400 plus community proofreaders and 1,000 plus authors from all over the world. And this is made possible in part by open access, the ability to share this information freely. That there's no requirement to purchase these books that are being published. They publish about 30 books a year. They are publishing books in a variety of languages. There is a multilingual and what we call a bibliodiversity. I'll talk a bit about more. And so this is the underlying principle. The idea that we're engaged in a global knowledge exchange and new kinds of communities are forming around this. And they're using the internet, of course, but they're also using what we would call infrastructure or publishing platforms that enable 400 editorial board members to work on manuscripts, 400 community proofreaders, not to read the same book, that would be a little dull, or a little bit overkill rather, but to in fact distribute the work globally and to participate. And you can see not every country is represented in this, but there is at least that sense of global distribution, and that is growing in ways that I'm going to give you some more information on about that. But let me turn to the work that we do in particular. This is the Public Knowledge Project. We're in our 25th year. Again, coming out of that school teaching experience, I was very concerned about how we could begin to make knowledge public to the world. As a professor of education, I realized that there was a kind of discrepancy between the research that we did and our inability to share it. We were not permitted by the publishers to make our research publicly available. And today that still holds to an extent, except that the open access movement is now making a greater proportion of that research freely available. We talk about a third of the literature, and more recent literature, about a half of the literature is now open and freely available. In order to help with that, it's not enough to tell people, make your research open. I did try that, by the way, and it's not very effective. What I have ended up doing was saying, what if we helped you make it open? What if we built publishing platforms that you could use to make your journals freely available? And we would make our platform free to you as an example. And we started with the journal system, OJS. We've developed one for monographs. You just saw that, or publishing books called Open Monograph Press. And we have software for preprints called Open Preprint Systems. So this is called infrastructure. This is the bones or the publishing house underneath the journal. You don't see this so much in the background, but it is what makes it possible for journals to assemble manuscripts, for them to edit and peer review, for them to proofread, as we just saw, and for them to publish on a platform like OJS. OJS is in its, actually OJS is not in its 25th year, it's about its 22nd. Took us a couple of years to get it built, but for 20 odd years now, OJS, and for 15 or so years OMP, and for only 2 or 3 years OPS, have been out in the world and have been distributed quite widely. Now, part of the important aspect of this is this notion of global distribution. Our principle with OJS was that we would make the software freely available so it could be distributed. It could be downloaded and installed anywhere. It could become part of a global system that wasn't really a part of the norm in scholarly publishing with the European centers and the American centers for publishing. And the result of that earlier system, I can portray with this map from my colleague, Juan Pablo Alperin, that is hugely distorted. This is 1991. The size of the country is on the distribution of authors in one of the most important indexes, the Web of Science. So the United States is outsized because the majority of authors come from there. Europe is also very large, the UK in particular, and then you'll notice Africa and Latin America. Even 20 years later, there is a slight change, a slight growth in Latin America, for example. Let me go back and just take that, show you the change in 20 years, but it's still not a fair or proportional map. And this was a great concern with us. This was an aspect of the internet age that we thought was needed to be addressed, that in fact, the internet could enable us to distribute publishing platforms on a much more global basis. And so I want to show you what has happened since we've been distributing OJS. This is a distribution of the journals. Now, I don't have the same map scale. Juan has one set of skills and I'm working with another set of skills. But what we see here is that the darker the country, the more OJS journals have been installed. There are 34,000 journals using OJS. So this open source system is the most widely used platform in the world today. And that's largely because the countries that were not previously represented here are now being represented. In fact, Latin America is one of the strongest. The United States is doing quite well, but Indonesia is in fact the leader, and India is very strong as well, and Russia is yet another of the leaders, and Spain is yet another. But other countries in Africa are publishing on the system, as well as throughout the Middle East. So there is a sense then that there are ways in the distribution of the infrastructure that can help. That there is an interest in science, there's a scientific activity and scholarly activity around the world. The university system is a global one. And on that basis, we're seeing this kind of growth. And so again, using OJS as the example, you can see that since 2010, the growth in the number of journals is quite large, much, much faster growth in the global use. That is 80% of these journals are in the global south than we're seeing in the global north. So the vitality of new science and scholarship is beginning to grow in these areas and growing without slowing down at all. Now, this is all in the abstract. These are the numbers, these are the growth. You're saying to yourself, what do these journals look like? And somewhat unfairly, I'm going to show you a very nice example to start with. This is a Journal of Tibetan Literature, Research, Translation, and Criticism. This is part of a group that has centers, Tibetan literature centers around the world, about 6 of them. And this journal publishes on a regular basis and uses OJS and is customized and given it its own design and look. And it is a multilingual journal that operates, and I'll talk a bit more about languages in a few minutes. Let me give you one more as an example of what our journals can look like. So this is another journal in Spanish, and a journal that can publish in multiple languages, but in this case in Spanish, which is one of our leading, I'll look at some of the languages with you, or one of our leading languages. And here again, the point is that the research is being published in a way that can be globally distributed, globally indexed. I'll have a look at some of the indexes in a moment. And is providing opportunities on the scale of open access. So these 34,000 journals that are using OJS today, it's over 95% of them are open. The research is being shared. It's being shared in multiple languages. And in fact, let me take you to that point. The distribution of languages, you'll see Arabic we have 88 journals in Arabic, but it is in our top 10 languages. You'll notice that Ukrainian is quite popular as well, but the 4 leading languages are English, Indonesian, Spanish, and Portuguese. And this in itself is a change in terms of openness. What we mean by open is its availability and its sense of diversity, and the linguistic diversity. And in fact, in terms of how many languages we're working in, there are 60 languages being used to publish research, not just study of 60 languages, but that 60 languages are being used in the publication of research. So some very, very few journals in that language. But we think this contribution, again, to this term bibliodiversity, is making a great deal of difference to the global scale and to the openness in terms of the inclusivity of the research activity. Another aspect of this language diversity is that the majority of our journals are in one language, most certainly, but very close behind at 43%, they're bilingual. And there's even a portion that are trilingual. And again, that kind of inviting aspect in terms of language. And I'm sure that artificial intelligence and the ability to generate across languages, ability to translate across languages, will only add to this sense. And again, that makes public access much greater because, because English is not the global, I mean, it is a global language on one level, but it's not everyone's language by any means. Now, let me start with some of the issues that we're facing and some of the challenges that are in front of us. And that is, one of them at least, is the question of indexing. So we have this sense of the global north and its set of journals that are very well indexed and very strongly or widely rather available to everyone. And one of our concerns in the use and distribution of this infrastructure, this open journal systems, is how well is it being indexed and how available is it? And if you have a look at this chart, it's a little distressing and a little gratifying in some ways. You'll notice the Web of Science, which was the source of that earlier diagram that was so influential. Let me just go back for a second. This is the Web of Science representation of authors in 2011. It was even worse in 1991. And part of that misrepresentation is the fact that only 1% or 1.2% of the journals that use OJS are in the Web of Science, that there is a huge concentration on the global north. There's a huge concentration in English in the Web of Science. And its influence has changed. It used to be really the only serious index, but I'm going to show you, as you can see on this table, in fact, that there are other indexes, each of them with more of OJS. The EBSCO host has 4.3% of its titles are from OJS, and 3.9% of Scopus, which again is an Elsevier, not again, but is an Elsevier product, and still is underrepresenting. Again, thinking that there are 34,000 journals represented, or sorry, in this chart, excuse me, let me qualify that, it's 25,000. This table was done 2020. So the 3.9% of the journals are in the index. And then you jump down to Google Scholar. Well, we don't know how many journals there are in Google Scholar. It's a bit of a mystery where we know how many journals there are in the other indexes. But we do know that 22,000 journals using OJS are in Google Scholar, and that's 88.3% of the journals are, 88.3% of journals using OJS are in. So there is an indexing going on, but there needs to be pressure put on, and we hope that our research in this area, including this table, will begin to convince some of the leading indexes like EBSCO, Scopus, and the Web of Science to become more globally inclusive. It's to their advantage, and it's certainly to the advantage of this global knowledge exchange, which I've been promoting with you. So in terms of providing the big picture, I hope you have a sense now that our public knowledge project is concerned with this global knowledge exchange and increasing it. It's concerned with establishing open access as a standard. That is, research should be published on an open basis. The other element is the question of what's the economy behind these journals. And we have about an 86 or 87% of our journals are running on a diamond open access model, which means that they don't charge the readers. They're open access. That's what open access is. Don't charge the readers, but they also don't charge the authors. They're not part of that gold APC economy where authors are paying $1,000, $3,000, $10,000 to have an article published on an open access basis. Over 85% of the journals using OJS don't engage in that. They have support from their institution. They have very, very strong commitment from their faculty members, from scholars, researchers, from students, and they are able to operate on an average of 45 to 55 articles a year without charging authors to make their articles open access, and as I say, without charging readers at all. So having given you that introduction to the bigger picture, I want to take you inside and give you a sense of what does it mean to have a publishing platform? What does it involve and what's engaged in this? And could I possibly consider having a system like this and work on it in terms of being part of a journal or a university press? But also as a member of the public, what is it that I'm seeing in terms of these journals and what's behind, as it were, the public side of the journals in terms of what's involved in the platform itself. So let me start with Heidelberg University Publishing, which is a book publisher. I want to put an emphasis on books. Is my favorite aspect of scholarship is the book, but I understand the journal is the dominant form. So I'll get to the provide you some sense of the journal. In fact, I should say that the journals and books and preprints are all based on the same system, that we use a common underlying structure or platform, if you like, with some of the same aspects. In other words, we all have submission systems. I'll show you some of these. We all have peer review, whether it's a book or a journal. The preprints don't have peer review, but they have moderation. We all have copy editing. Well, let's again limit that. Journals and presses, book presses have copy editing. They have production. And they have indexing capacities, and the OPS has as well. So what we're looking at here is part of the cataloging. Books have cataloging. So this is old age before modernity. This isn't related to me at all, of course. It's just a coincidence that it's old age before modernity. But I may pick up this book after and have a look. But at any rate, I just want to take you into what is involved. So what happens when a book is published on a public knowledge project platform? You get the full aspect of the book being described to promote it. You get details in terms of what's available. You can look at a chapter. You can download the whole book. You can get it in multiple formats. It's interesting that the chapters are in HTML, but the front matter and content's only a PDF. You can buy the book on print on demand. You can leave comments on the book and you can recommend. So it's very interactive. And we've designed this in a way that can be customized. In other words, Heidelberg's press doesn't look like other presses. So that's part of our concern for the individuality and expression of publishers. But let me take you further inside. Oops, sorry, not that way. So this is now we're right into the editorial heart. You've entered into the editorial office. No one's smoking cigars. It's not that kind of office. In fact, those offices don't exist anymore, I hope. But it is the office, and it's a very neat and tidy office where you, as an editor, this is you over here on the top right hand side. I don't know if you can see my cursor. And you have multiple settings. So as an editor, you can control, if you go to the left-hand side and look, you can control the catalog. You're looking at submissions right now, what manuscripts have come in, and you can control the website, you can look at the statistics, users and roles. But what I want you to see is that these are management systems that allow a group of people, like the 400 editors that in Language Science Press, to distribute the work. And so the authors are listed. This is Berg et al. This is Ali et al. Authors. They're in different stages, internal reviews, submissions. And so these are all standard publishing. In fact, scholarly standards are a very important part of what we do. We provide on a distributed basis platforms that not only set up the structure, but instruct and inform users about how to follow the scholarly standard. Oops, sorry. And so part of this management, I don't need to take you too far into it, but we keep all of the archives of previous manuscripts. And for a given, let's look at just one particular manuscript for the process. So now we're right in the heart of things. In fact, this is a very privileged view. Only the editor and the author, and maybe the copy editor, maybe the production manager would see this. So we take the manuscript through a submission stage, an internal review, an external review, or we don't take it through, sorry, the publisher, the group of scholars, the colleagues who are working on this project would take it through, who are the publishers. The internal and external review, copy editing and production. The peer review process, is very carefully monitored. We have reminders, overdue, and decisions are made about the manuscript. So this is a very important part in terms of the information trust aspect, that the peer review process is the point of scrutiny, the point of a check on how this information, the quality of this information, and how it's been vetted before it's distributed to you. And that's an important aspect that we work on quite a bit in terms of providing structure for scholars around the world. We also see the publishing platform as a source of integrity for other aspects. It keeps a very strong record. There's in the top right-hand corner, there's an activity log. So all of the processes are clear and kept a record of, as well as the participants in the bottom right-hand corner, who has access to the manuscript, the confidentiality of the reviewers, for example. You can see the reviewers are anonymous. Both the author is anonymous and the reviewers are anonymous. It's kind of an old tradition. So this is at the heart of this production process. When it reaches production, when it reaches its final stage and is prepared as a PDF, there's marketing work on, which is the cataloging of it, and then there's publication. And part of the process is to publish it, whether it's on Amazon, if it's a book, or published as a journal into some of the major indexes, like as we saw before, Google Scholar. It's very, very common, but there are other ones, OpenAlex and Dimensions, index a fair proportion of the OJS journals. So that distribution, that global distribution on a multilingual basis requires a good deal of infrastructure, of support. And this open source software, and again, I should maybe just take a moment to emphasize that, the open source software, what we mean by open source is not only is it freely distributed, not only can it be downloaded locally without anyone controlling it, and that has its risks and dangers, but not only can it be downloaded locally, it can be worked on. It's accessible. So the designs that you saw earlier, the very interesting designs from the Tibetan journal, for example, are part of the openness of the software to design factors that are done locally. And part of the support, part of the aspect is support for open source software. What I want to introduce you to is how we do that. So giving out software for free would not do it because people would not understand, in fact, how to work with it. And so what we do is we see the responsibility, and we're in our 25th year now, and we've learned this responsibility step by step. that we provide what's called documentation. The documentation is very important. So this is just for Open Monograph Press. We talk about how to get started. We provide support for designing it. We use a plugin architecture that allows you to design your own plugins. Like you may want to have an extra review round, or you may want to have an editor-in-chief who makes the final decision. You may want to have a different route for the research and scholarship. And all of that is made possible through plugins. We have, obviously, in terms of learning OMP, and notice where it's at level 3 or version 3 rather, version 3 in OMP. GDPR is a very big issue in Europe, so we have special support for it. This is for privacy, individual privacy on the web. We have a very strong translation. We use WebLate, another open source program for translation. So our software is being used to publish in 60 languages, but the software itself is available in 30 to 35 languages. Not all of them are absolutely complete and up to date. We also have technical documentation. And just very briefly, because I do want to leave time for some questions here. We provide support. What I'm showing you here is inside. Sorry, let me go back a step here. So this is the Open Monograph Press. This is the kind of the lead page of our documentation. You go inside to the docs, and we provide videos as well as a full indexing on the left-hand side to how to use the material. So what I want you to appreciate is that in building open access and establishing a global basis for the sharing of research, a lot of support and thought needs to go in. A lot of the community needs to participate. Our Arabic versions, for example, are all translated by members of the Arabic community. There is an economy at work here, but very much the contributions of the community are an important part of that. So that we can help provide the support. We do have documentation in Arabic, Spanish and Portuguese, English and French. We have videos in French and Spanish and English. So all of these different elements are a critical aspect of what it means to build a global knowledge exchange. And we're just one project. There are a good number of other projects that are engaged in similar kinds of actions. I'd mentioned Janeway as another open source software project that we have collaborated with and that is working in a similar space, if you like. And so what I want to suggest to you is that the efforts at work in making research globally open are taking place on multiple levels, that there are scholars at every university in this world, I would say. A bit of something I can't quite establish, but let me imagine. There are scholars at every university in the world who are committed to sharing their work. We're looking for opportunities and may not be able to afford an article processing charge for Nature or one of the more expensive journals, but could engage in a reciprocal, collaborative, collective operation of a local journal in which the work would be published. It would still be peer reviewed in the same standards and same manner as journals anywhere, and could in that sense become part of a global and open knowledge exchange. So let me close at this point and open it to questions. And thank you for this opportunity to spend my evening, the last hour, I hope, of my evening with you today, actually July 4th. So it's a whole
also,
day.
yeah, sorry, John, happy 4th of July, belatedly. Thank you so much. You'll see afterwards, I've been tweeting everything you said the whole way through, which is why I need to tap my camera off so I could take photos without anyone noticing.
Right. The slides are available.
So thank you so much. This was absolutely, absolutely fascinating. On our side, we use OJS and we think it's a really brilliant tool. And I know my team particularly are online and watching this and have loads of questions as well, I'm sure, about the technical sides. But we want to throw open the Q&A for all of you here attending us now about the broader concepts that John was really discussing. So if you have questions, please do pop them in the Q&A. So not in the main chat, but in the Q&A section. You have a few minutes to formulate them because I actually have a question myself. So while you guys are all thinking about the questions that I'm sure you have for John, I just want to know, so I come from the background of, on the one hand, we're F.O.R.M, we're really promoting open science and the public right to know. But I also sit as the director of a literary society, and we own a journal. It's a subscription journal because that's one of the reasons that we get subscribers, which keep our society afloat. So how do we balance that need more generally for open access on the one hand, and the need to ensure that smaller journals and smaller societies that are still incredibly valuable to the wider research community, albeit niche parts of the research community, can still survive in this more in this sort of newer, more technologically focused open world?
So thank you, Emily, for that question. So one of the things we work on in the public knowledge are the economic models involved. So small societies may be using their journals as a source of income, the subscriptions in particular. And we've had some great success in working with what's called subscribe to open, this model. So if you have 200 or 300 libraries subscribing to your journal, there are, I'll tell you, 176 journals at this point that are using this model. And that is, they turn to the libraries that were subscribing to their journal before, and they said, what if we charge the same amount and we make the journal open? You would get the same journal and you would have the same access, but everybody else would as well. And so that the value that you place in that journal, subscriber, is something that probably should be shared. So at no extra cost to you, library, you can begin to support this journal being open. And up to this point, it has been working. We've had multiple, as I say, 176 journals have tried out this model, and they tried it out on the basis that if they did not get the libraries to subscribe, they would not go open. And those 176 were able to get enough libraries subscribing, probably the same number they had before. And so they make the journal open. And some of them are, one of them is a couple of mathematics societies, a water research organization, WPA, uses it. So there are a number of small societies that have found this to be very successful because libraries are very strong supporters of open access. And they lose nothing by virtue of supporting open access journals. So subscribe to open. You can search online. There's a community of practice that you can be an observer and learn more about. So that's my pitch for S2O, as we call it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got starting to get questions into the Q&A. What question from one of our attendees? Is there an easy platform, like a search engine besides Google Scholar, where you can browse through all of the OJS, OMS titles available right now? Because it is a bit difficult because the PKP platform is an infrastructure and they are not normally searchable in tools.
Yeah, so we have tried to keep an index of journals using OJS, and we have found it was overwhelming. They're just growing so quickly, and it is a big job to properly index these things. You can't just collect a list when it's 34,000. Now we do publish a list, a data set of all our journals. It's
brilliant. I love that. Every year it comes out. If you guys haven't seen it yet, do go and find it. It makes for absolutely fascinating reading about the sort of decolonization of research globally. It's a really good testament to the achievements and value of everything that PKP are doing. So go read it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, keep going, please. No, sorry. So yes, so we do make our data set available, and if you search for beacon data, PKP beacon data, you will find the actual raw data to work with. But I would strongly recommend that Google Scholar does a better job of indexing our work than anyone.
Thank you. Ooh, an interesting question. Some journals claim, apparently, that the free version of the system wouldn't qualify the journal to be indexed in Scopus. Oh. I was going to say we use the free version of the system, and we've just got we're hugely proud. We've just got the first journal in a country ever into Scopus. So that's definitely
And we have journals in the Web of Science, just a very small proportion of 34,000. So there is no restriction. Right, and there is only the free version of OJS. There is no more than the free version. Everything we do with the journal system is made free. We do host journals, so and we provide support for those journals, but they use exactly the same software, and anything we do for the hosted journals is made available to everyone. So there is a hosting publishing services aspect, but the software is common. But thanks for the question. It is that is a I understand there's a pressure around getting into Scopus and getting into the Web of Science, and we work very closely with the Directory of Open Access Journals, and we have reached out to Scopus and others about the indexing aspects. But I think it's a mindset about the global South that still has to be overcome.
And also, I think that just ultimately that weight of citations, like it just takes time. And half of these journals are too new to have got that momentum. It takes time to build up momentum. It's something we say whenever we launch new journals. We're like, oh, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen in 2 years. It's not. You have to get people to read it and then publish it themselves. Like that's a long cycle.
Right. So Emily just referred to an article on recalibrating scholarly communication about decolonization, where we did the analysis of 60 languages. We're just doing an article, we're doing a study right now on citations within OJS and outside of OJS. So we will
fascinating.
Yes. So we will establish, I think, that there's much more citation going on. The outside world citing OJS journals and OJS citing the outside world. So we're that should be coming, I mean, it takes months and months and months, but it's something that I can tease the audience with in terms of.
I'm definitely very excited about that. Actually, I'll put that in my diary for when it comes up. So we have another question. Is there any system for your journal's rating? I think we've sort of already covered that anyway, in as much as
I'm not sure. Yeah, but how do you interpret that?
I don't know, Galina, would you care to expand upon your question? I assume she's asking, is there like an internal, do you have like an internal PKP impact factor or something which?
Oh, no. So yes, we don't have that. We keep statistics. So the journals have downloads, how many downloads there are. And Google Scholar keeps a citation count for every article, as it does for every article that it has. So there are ways, in fact, I work with a student journal at Stanford that has over 250 citations for undergraduate journal in Google Scholar. So there are ways of checking. Simagio, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we don't have yes. We shy away from that kind of rating system because it has worked so well against the global South. And we think the impact factor and a number of the rating systems are based mainly on the familiarity of a small group of journals to a small group. But Simagio actually does some interesting analysis too. I wouldn't want to take anything from it in terms of bibliometrics. So we are, I just want to say we're providing a basis for that in Google Scholar in terms of citations, but also within the journal itself in terms of downloads and keeping track of social media.
Brilliant. So we have time for a few more questions. Here's one. Here's a big one that I know you can talk about for quite some time. What does PKP do about the problem with predatory and clone journals using the OJS platform?
Yes, so
it's a very large question.
Let me start by saying the first thing we did is we analyzed it. And we're finding that it's less than 5% of the journals are on the predatory list. Cabell's list is the current one, but Beale's is the older one. So we're less than 5%. We have written to those journals because they're like 200, it's about 275. And we've run into outraged and frustrated editors. Editors of subscription journals are on those lists. And if they're a subscription journal, they can't be predatory because they're not charging authors. So there is a lot of misrepresentation, but we are doing something else about it. What we're doing is we're creating what we're calling a publication facts label. something I've promised Emily to do on a presentation, a seminar. Again, stay tuned for a seminar on the publication facts label that will allow you that the platform will establish the peer review process, the editorial board profiles, and build in levels of integrity and trust in the
Oh,
journals.
brilliant.
So we are, again, addressing this, but we want to say that the level of concern about predatory journals is something that is a very small factor with OJS, less than 5%, of which that list itself is not reliable. That is, we've had people taken off the list. We've had 2 recently publishers taken off Cabell's because we wrote to them and said, you're on the list. Could you fix these things? And they said, we already have. And Cabell's then took them off. So I don't see this as a major threat. I think it is part of a tactic that, again, in terms of the global equity, is being used unfairly.
Mm. Also, I think, I mean, I know certainly in this region, we do have a growing problem with predatory publishers in general. I get, I would say, 3 or 4 emails a day, every single day from journals, not necessarily OJS, but just in general, the predatory journals. The uptick in the last, I would say, 2 years, it's gone from maybe 1 every month to 2 or 3 a day. Like, well, it's just relentless now. And I think they're really targeting people across like the Africa, Asia area. Really.
Yes. But I don't want to minimize the nuisance factor here. I want to minimize the threat to the global knowledge exchange. We also, some of us get emails from Springer and Elsevier, at least weekly.
Or occasionally Springer misspelled and it's actually something else completely different, pretending to be Springer. So I think we have time maybe for 1 or 2 more questions. So I've got another one now, which is, I think, flows on nicely from this one. But in the meantime, if any of you also, remember, we've still got time for more questions, so throw them in. How does open access relate to and either support or undermine the rise of misinformation and fake news that we've been seeing in recent years?
Yeah, so that is a brilliant question, really. It surprised me sometimes. So the question is, misinformation is on the rise, and as a school teacher, as I said, by trade, this is a great concern because it's the public access point. And what I think is necessary is that we need to begin to introduce research as a countermeasure to misinformation. You need to be able to check the facts. You're concerned about vaccinations, you should be able to look at the studies. You have a family member that's suffering a rare disease, you should be able to investigate for yourself, and you should be participating in the exchange of knowledge with your physicians and other family members. And so open access, I'm hoping, will become increasingly a countermeasure or a way of fighting, if you like, misinformation. And this will take some education in terms of the public. Again, going back to my school teaching days, I would say that we need to begin to introduce students, high school students. In fact, again, we're going to be doing this kind of study with this new label. The label we're using, I should say, comes out of the peanut butter, the nutrition labels that are on peanut butter jars and candy bars, and Coke cans, and all those things. We're using a similar kind of approach of informing the public about what's inside, what the journal is in fact doing as part of its production. But we're going to need some public education around that. So what I'm suggesting is that the schools need to take misinformation very seriously. They need to inform students about how to recognize bad emails, bad websites, but they also need to provide access and a comfort level or a confidence around working with trusted forms of research and understanding what that means by trust, peer review, editorial experts, and what that involves in terms of being able to check. How can I know that this journal is in fact participating in those scholarly standards, adhering to them? And our label will help, but there are also ways already to do that. Check the editors, look for indications of peer review policies and things like that. So to make that part of a high school science class seems to me a necessary aspect for the graduation of a public, even before they get to university, if they do get to university, a public that can begin to have somewhere to turn against the rise of misinformation.
So that's really interesting. So you're thinking of currently, I know PKP has been very much focused on that sort of higher education, tertiary education, and thereafter that sort of research into. So you're really pulling back and kind of going down to the
Yes, well, my roots.
World domination's coming soon.
So we're working with high school students in terms of their perception, and so the journal itself is not good enough. You need to be able to know that there's something different about a journal than there is about a newspaper report, or there is about a website or a blog, and that takes some education. We can't expect the public to intuit that.
Well, it's the same, you know, the difference even between going from like baby school to sort of secondary school, and you're taught to read in a different way, and then secondary school to university, again, you are always taught to read in a very different way. So I think that does make sense. People aren't taught to interpret information perhaps as rigorously at school as we are at university. So I'm sure that'll be a very exciting project. So we have time for a couple more questions if anyone has any. We've got
there's one here.
One here from Mohit. So he's saying OJS is open source and PKP is not charging any amount for installation, but some journals are using OJS and charging APCs for publication, and they are not open access.
Well, if they're charging APCs, article processing charges for publications, they had better be open access, because they're charging the author.
They're not, they're cheating somewhere.
They're not diamond if they're charging. And so we estimate there's 3 to 4% of our journals, 34,000, 3 to 4% are charging APCs, and they're charging APCs because they feel they have real costs. They feel there's a quality of HTML that they're producing that feels like, or they're paying a statistician to review the research. So I don't want to suggest that every journal can operate at the same financial level. There are investments. The society, Emily mentioned a small society that depended on its journal for its funding. So I'm suggesting an APC of $10,000. Yes, I have questions about that.
No, we do.
But I'm not suggesting, I wouldn't want to suggest, Mohit, that an APC is itself something immoral or something wrong. There does need to be financing in the system. How are we paying for OJS, by the way?
That's a very good question. How are you paying for OJS?
Yes, well, sometimes I have good questions too. Well, thank you for asking that question. So OJS is financed by the journals that we host. So we host about 700 out of 34,000, 700 journals that don't want to download the software, don't want to upgrade the software, have custom work they want us to do. And we charge them, and we use that money to subsidize all the other journals. We have government grants that support open access, particularly the Canadian government has been very generous in its support of PKP over the years. But we also have the MacArthur Foundation has supported us. The Arcadia Fund is supporting us right now. So we have multiple funders that support us. And the third area of support for OJS that allows us to make the software free to the world is the library community. We have in the area of 40 or 50, maybe 60 libraries, excuse me, that are members that see our contribution and use our software and see that contribution worth supporting. It's very similar to Subscribe to Open that I'm encouraging you to explore, Emily, and I'll be checking on next year when I come to my seminar. There is a world of interest and commitment to making research open. We just went through a pandemic that demonstrated how effective open science can be in terms of charging ahead to get a vaccine in a record time, in fact, but it didn't seem relatively short, but it was a record time in terms of vaccine development. So I think that in all of this, the instance is there is a commitment and a support, but there needs to be financial support in order to achieve the actual goals of open access.
I think that's a lovely message to end on. So I hope you'll all join me. I know, as ever, I'm the only one here with audio and video, so I have to clap by myself and look like a bit of a weirdo. But thank you so much, Sean. That was really just incredibly interesting. I've made so many notes just all the way through, and I'm sure everyone else has found this like incredibly interesting and helpful. And we very much look forward to you joining us again next year. So before you all leave, lovely delegates, just to let you know, we are now going into our August break. We assume you're all off either on holidays or maybe doing research sabbaticals or if you're in this region, just hunkering down and trying to avoid the punishing heat over the next few weeks. So we will be back in September. We have a really good program of events coming up with F.O.R.M talking about peer review, with Crossref talking about the global community and all the support they do around transparency research, and with DataCite talking about open data. So please do remember to check regularly. We will obviously be emailing you and putting announcements on social media as well. But if you want to plan ahead, do keep an eye on the events coming up in Q3 and Q4. And most importantly, of those events, if you could skip to the next slide, is our annual forum. Now, I mentioned this briefly at the start, but for those of you who missed it, this is the flagship event of the Forum for Open Research in MENA. And this year, we're hugely excited. UNESCO has partnered with us and Khalifa University, which is one of the top universities in the region. And the event is going to be held in Abu Dhabi in the UAE on the 23rd and 24th of October. It will be in person, but we are also hoping to offer a hybrid thing so that people who can't quite fly over can at least join us online. The theme is democratizing knowledge, the evolution of open science ecosystems and communities in the Arab world. The first day is going to be very much high-level policy-making panels with leading regional education policymakers from across the whole region, and presidents from the top universities, all sitting down and really debating the challenges and solutions, because obviously it's not all the same. It's not like every country is a paint by numbers. We know that there are differences within institutions and within the countries themselves. So we're trying to develop a roadmap for what to do next. So that's day one. And day two is a series, our call for papers has just closed, and we've got a really great program of papers coming up covering so many incredibly interesting aspects of open science, both from the wider community across the world, but also a number of case studies from within this region, from libraries, from universities, and from newly fledgling open science communities across the Arab world. So I do hope you'll consider joining us. There is an early bird discount that will be available until the end of August. And it's very cheap for registration. Just want to say it's about $130 because we are subsidizing it very heavily. And that's just for in-person registration. And there is also discounts available till the end of August on the accommodation at the conference venue as well. So do go and visit the website. We'll include it in the email after this as well with the link to that so that you can attend and hopefully enjoy it. It's going to be a great event. Last but not least, Nahil, if you could go to the last slide. Thank you. As ever, please do take the time to fill out the survey. The QR code's here. We will send it in the follow-up email afterwards. The reason being, you might have some extra questions for John. You might also have some extra compliments for John for his really, outstanding talk. But also, we like to use this survey to find out what you want to know about, what areas you're concerned about within that smorgasbord of open science themes and issues, so that we can tailor the next series of events throughout 2024 to your needs. So please do take the time to fill in the survey and tell us what you want to know about, where we can help you more. So once again, thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today, tonight, tomorrow, like last night, tomorrow. I'm not really sure of the timing for everyone. I know we're all over the world now. And thank you once again to John so much for a really, really thought-provoking talk. And for teasing us with all the exciting things that you're doing and that are coming next.
Okay, thank you, Emily.
So we will leave this up for a few more minutes so you guys can take the QR code if needed. But John and I will bid you good morning / on John's side, good night.